In our last episode, Abdulmecid had survived Europe's cannons and cholera, relying on borrowed soldiers, foreign loans, and precarious alliances. Victory in the Crimean War had brought neither pride nor independence, only debt, dependence, and a reminder that even a sultan's armies could be outmatched by geography and politics. Far from the Black Sea, a quieter test awaited him, and the sultan, outwardly meek, would rise taller than any European power. This is road to destruction, the world wars. Ireland was starving. The Great Famine had turned the Emerald Isle into a landscape of despair, fields left fallow, villages emptied, children dying of hunger and disease. News of the suffering crossed the seas, reaching Istanbul in French newspapers and diplomatic dispatches. For the Sultan and his ministers, it was impossible to ignore, millions dying mere miles away, while Europe flaunted its wealth on foreign battlefields instead of relief. In the Ottoman court, discussion of the famine quickly became a matter of conscience and diplomacy. Some advisers cautioned restraint. Britain would see any intervention as interference, they warned, and resources were already stretched thin. Yet Abdulmecid, moved by reports and by his own moral compass, insisted on action. Funds were allocated, grain gathered, and ships loaded for Dublin. Letters accompanied the cargo, affirming not only aid, but solidarity. In a world where diplomacy was measured in cannon fire, the Sultan was sending mercy. Even as the empire staggered under debt, disease, and rebellion, Abdulmecid could not turn away from suffering. Memories of his mother's teachings, that a ruler's strength was measured as much in mercy as in armies, guided his hand. While Europe hesitated, unwilling to upset the delicate balance of power, the Sultan acted. Ships carried grain, funds flowed from Istanbul, and relief was dispatched to the starving in Ireland, a Catholic nation abandoned by fellow Christian states. In doing so, Abdulmecid drew on centuries of Islamic tradition, where zakat and charitable giving were sacred duties, and mercy toward the suffering transcended borders. Even the sick man of Europe could show a kind of strength that did not rely on cannon or coin, a quiet, enduring, moral authority. In these acts, the Sultan's humanity outshone the pragmatism and self-interest of far more powerful empires, but the gesture did not go unchallenged. British authorities, furious at a foreign monarch delivering aid to their domestic crisis, imposed blockades and delays at ports. Ships carrying Ottoman grain were held in harbours, inspected and taxed, forcing captains to negotiate with officials who treated them with suspicion, even hostility. Letters from Dublin described frustrated merchants, rotting cargo, and anxious local leaders desperately awaiting relief that seemed perpetually stalled. The Sultan's kindness was being slowed, obstructed, and weaponized as a point of political leverage. Despite the blockade, Ottoman diplomats pressed for delivery. Envoys in London and Dublin argued relentlessly, invoking humanitarian need and international sympathy. Meanwhile, the Sultan's ships navigated British bureaucracy with care, leveraging French and neutral ports to bypass delays when possible. Grain arrived piecemeal, funds trickled through, and though the blockade slowed the aid, it could not entirely stop it. Every successful delivery was a quiet victory over the political power trying to suppress it. For the Irish, the Ottoman aid became a lifeline, even if delayed. Many, including Archbishop Paul Cullen, publicly thanked Abdulmecid and the empire for such generosity. Grain and funds fed thousands, supporting local relief committees and allowing hospitals to treat the starving. The gesture was noticed far beyond Ireland. Newspapers in France, the Ottoman Empire, and parts of Europe hailed the Sultan's action as moral leadership. A Muslim monarch had acted decisively where the British Empire had faltered, turning the tide of despair, even if only in fragments. Yet the episode underscored the limits of power. Abdulmecid could act with principle, but he could not compel compliance from Britain. Geography, politics, and the empire's dependencies still constrained his influence. His ability to feed distant people highlighted his moral vision, but it did little to secure the empire itself. Even as Ireland's starving children were fed, Abdulmecid could not escape the reality at home. The coffers were fragile, the provinces unrestful, and European eyes everywhere. Yet in that moment, a sultan who had weathered cannon, disease, and diplomacy chose generosity over calculation, compassion over convenience. His gift crossed seas and faiths, a quiet declaration that even the sick man of Europe could act with moral authority. But charity cannot pay debts, and kindness cannot fill treasuries. As Europe cheered or seethed, Ottoman coffers would soon be pried open in another currency, loans, credit, and contracts that would shape the empire far more than any fleet or edict. The stage was set. The next battle would not be fought with muskets, but with numbers on a ledger, and the Sultan would once again face the cost of survival in a world where even victory could enslave. In our next episode, Debt and Dependence, the battle moves from seas and fields to ledgers and contracts. European banks tighten their grip on the empire's future. Abdulmecid will see that survival comes at a price, and the Ottoman state, now modernized on paper, had weakened its core. Even triumph and charity cannot spare an empire from the ledgers that govern its fate, and the reckoning draws near as an idea once only dreamed of in European palaces and dining halls comes to fruition. This is Road to Destruction, the World Wars,